and people did not have a good opinion about him. They knew that he is cunning, he is deceptive, he cheats. Later on, we found out that he was also known in the community that he can arrange illegal licenses.
The feds caught on to Shahid Hussein's license scam, and in 2003 he was arrested in a sting operation. But as Muslim communities in America came under increased scrutiny after 9/11, Shahid Hussein proved to be very useful. He was a Muslim willing to spy on fellow Muslims in exchange for amnesty. Instead of sending him to jail or deporting him, he got off on a plea deal, and the FBI hired him as an informant.
When you're dealing with informants, you're dealing with people who have been convicted of or threatened with conviction or found in the act of some kind of criminality. And there is everything in their interest to make sure that they do what the FBI wants.
In the summer of 2003, the informant showed up at Mohammed Hussein's pizzeria in Albany, posing as a wealthy businessman with ties to militant groups in Pakistan. Mohammed Hussein's wife, Fatima, recalls how persistent the informant was in trying to befriend them.
This person kept coming to me, and a couple of times I told my husband, I says, look like he's keep coming, I don't know what is his intention or anything.
The informant drew Mohammed Hussein into extended debates about jihad. Across hours of secretly recorded conversations, the informant repeatedly brought up American foreign policy and the role of militant Islam.
The defendant is recorded saying, look, this is not, I'm not really into violent jihad. That's not really what I'm about. And the informant keeps coming back and saying, are you sure, are you sure?
Then, as Mohammed Hussein's pizza business began to fail, the informant made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Economically, we was a little bit crisis situation, so we didn't go bank. And he was saying, brother, I am your brother. If you need some money, so I can be, maybe you can borrow from me and give it to me.
The informant offered Mohammed Hussein a loan of $45,000 and a gift of $5,000. The imam of the mosque, Yasin Araf, was brought in to witness the loan. At a few points, the informant told the man he was a member of the Pakistan-based terrorist group Jaish-e-Mohammed, or JEM. On one occasion, he showed the pizzeria owner Mohammed Hussein a part of a missile and later made obscure references to a fictitious JEM plot to assassinate a Pakistani diplomat in New York with a missile.
He did say it was for weaponry. I think it was for a missile in this case, and he did say that it was for a terrorist cause. And so, you know, that part of it is very discomforting, that, you know, preying upon people's vulnerabilities and pushing them to this point is unsettling.
It's unclear from the recordings how much the men understood that the money for the loan had been allegedly laundered from weapons sales to a terrorist group. But Mohammed Hussein's acceptance of the loan and Yasin Araf's witnessing of the loan formed the basis for the government's case against the two men. Promises of money played a key role in the Newburgh case as well. James Weddick says it's not uncommon for the FBI to send informants into poor communities.
What they're looking for is money because they're desperate. They're looking for a job. They're looking for some way to feed their family. And so they're there because this informant is flashing money around, driving a fancy car, and maybe living in a fancy apartment. And they too want part of that prize.
By 2007, the informant in the Albany case, Shahid Hussein, showed up in the impoverished, largely African-American community of Newburgh. He arrived at the Al-Ikhlas Mosque one day, flush with funds and driving a BMW.
We called him Maqsood because that's who he said he was.
Salahuddin Mustafa Muhammad is the imam of the mosque in Newburgh. He remembers the informant well. Posing again as a wealthy Pakistani businessman with ties to the militant group Jaish-e-Mohammed, Shahid Hussein followed a remarkably similar script to the story he told in Albany.
I started hearing from different members of the community that he was talking stuff about jihad and something about a group in Pakistan and telling the brothers they should go over and help him in Pakistan because he's a part of some group.
The imam recalls that one man was willing to listen to the informant's stories and happy to be driven around in his car and treated to free meals. James Cromedy is a 44-year-old petty criminal who'd been in and out of prison numerous times. The FBI began secretly recording conversations between James Cromedy and the informant in October 2008, after the informant reported that James had made extremist anti-American statements. The informant promised James $250,000 to help him carry out a plot to bomb a synagogue and a Jewish community center in the Bronx and attack military planes at the Stewart International Airport near Newburgh. Within a few months, the informant was urging James to recruit more people to act as lookouts while they carried out the plot. That's when Alicia McCollum's nephew, David Williams, entered the scene. At the time, his 20-year-old brother, Lord, had just been diagnosed with a deadly liver disease. The doctor said he needed a liver transplant to survive, but the family couldn't afford the surgery.
You know, I'm like, okay, Lord was sick, okay. He needed money, all right. I'm like, oh, he got caught up in a bad situation. But I heard informant. Informant?
The informant had promised to give David Williams at least $25,000 and drove him to visit his brother in the hospital.
He's a manipulator. I'm from the streets. He's a manipulator. He's a con artist. This is a damn bad motion picture. They should be ashamed of themselves.
In court, the government has admitted that the FBI picked the targets and supplied the men with the fake bombs and the missile. But the government says the fact the men actually planted the bombs near the Riverdale synagogue is evidence of their willingness to commit terrorism.
The big story is who took the lead here, who created the story of the crime that was going to ensue, and who made it happen.
Karen Greenberg says the way the trial is going, it's the informant who's in the spotlight.
If we're ever going to have a public debate on the use of informants in terrorism cases, this is the case, more than any of the other cases we've seen.
Alicia McCollum believes her nephew and the rest of the Newburgh Four were entrapped by the FBI.
This is entrapment. You're going to send an informant into a impoverished community, the most impoverished county, to do your trickery. You ain't stumbled upon a cell. Nobody didn't tell you that someone was plotting to do anything. You created a crime.
The government maintains this was a sting operation and the four men were not entrapped. They say the four are militant Muslims who can be heard actively planning for the attack in the recordings made by the informant. But James Weddick says the recordings alone don't prove anything.
You can get anyone to say anything on any given day if you just try long enough. And that's what some of these informants do.
He warns that the FBI's use of unscrupulous informants in poor communities is a dangerous business.
You just can't continue to, to get a select group of people who are responsible for petty crimes, give them huge amounts of money, and send them into a small minority community desperate because of the recession and work not being there, and suggesting people commit crimes and not expect an explosion to happen because they're desperate for money and the informant is offering huge rewards.
The Imam of the Newburgh Mosque isn't surprised by what happened here. It's happened before to the African-American community, he says. This just reminds him of COINTELPRO, the FBI's counterintelligence program.
I believe that what we are seeing today with the FBI surveillance and the FBI allowing for agent provocateurs to enter into Muslim communities is the same thing that happened in the 60s with a lot of the black nationalist organizations. That's what I see happening today in the Islamic community. The FBI, they are sending these agent provocateurs into the community, and they are cultivating and nurturing and actually creating situations that would never have occurred if they didn't have their man in there to do that.
To what extent are informants driving these cases? We spoke to one informant who agreed to an on-camera interview on the condition we don't show his face. His name is Mahmoud Omar, and he was one of two informants the FBI used in the Fort Dix case. He acknowledged that he was central to the government's case against the Duca brothers and Mohammed Schnur.
I can say American government was lucky. He had me this time. And if he didn't have me, we didn't know something can happen.
Would it have been possible without your help?
No, of course not. Somebody have to do it, and they did it. Nobody can. I did. I'm the one did everything.
Mahmoud Omar is an Egyptian national who's lived in the United States since the mid-1990s and was arrested and imprisoned for bank fraud in 2001. He was facing possible deportation when he agreed to work for the FBI as an informant on this case. Former FBI agent James Weddick acknowledges that the FBI often has to resort to people with criminal pasts to work as their informants. But the well-established exception, he says, is lying.
If they are liars or they've got something in their past that suggests they're liars, like a bank fraud conviction, you can't use that individual.
Weddick says that in addition to dropping charges and helping with immigration troubles, the FBI typically offers informants large sums of money to work for them.
If you think he'll lie just because he wants to tell you a lie, he'll lie easy for $200,000.
Mahmoud Omar was paid over $200,000 plus expenses for the 3 years that the FBI hired him to befriend the young men who'd gone to the Poconos and record their conversations. At the trial, the informant testified that the men wanted to attack soldiers at Fort Dix. He said one of the men, Mohammed Schnoor, spent most of his time watching videos glorifying Islamist violence. But Buram Duka says it was the informant who urged them to download the videos onto Schnoor's computer.
97% of the videos that Mohammed Schnoor had on his computer were downloaded from Mahmoud Omar. Mahmoud Omar was telling Mohammed Schnoor, download this video, download this video. And I guess he was trying to get Mohammed Schnoor's anger to build up. He used to tell us, like, the older people overseas, they're fighting against the people that are attacking the Muslims. He goes, older people are fighting. What about us? We're young, we're strong. How come we're just sitting in Dunkin' Donuts drinking coffee?
The informant denies he was the one driving the plot forward and says 21-year-old Mohammed Schnoor was the ringleader.
I'm not taking Mohammed to anywhere. Mohammed, he knew where we're gonna go.
So it was his idea?
I have nothing to do with that. I'm just only a recorder.
Today, more than a year after the sentencing, the informant defends his role in the Fort Dix plot and says the 5 men got what they deserved. But Mahmoud Omar now feels like he can't show his face in the community.
We face the Arab people and the Muslim people. We take it like, I did that for money, and this is people like Duka's family and Shnuda's family. He's make it like a government making case, and this of course is not true. And he make it like I'm the one that put his kids in the jail, and that's even not true. People being in jail the rest of his life, I can't do anything about. You did that for yourself. I don't do anything to you. I don't tell you to do anything. You did that for yourself.
Mohammed Schnoor and the Duka brothers were arrested soon after purchasing machine guns from the FBI informant. But Karen Greenberg says there's little evidence that they would have used them to carry out a terrorist plot.
How do we draw the line between young men who are willing to do violence, who talk it up a lot, who get into a head that is not good, and you'd like to stop them from what they're doing, and then whether they were actually going to commit terrorism? And I think what happened in the Fort Dix case, again, the purchasing of weapons and it is a difficult one. How much this was going to be terrorism, how much they actually identify with terrorism causes, we don't know.
James Weddick believes it's a waste of taxpayer dollars for the FBI to be investigating terrorist plots it helped create, whether in Fort Dix, Albany, or Newburgh.
It's my opinion that while the Bureau busies itself with these nonsense cases, they could have been expending these resources catching real bad guys. And that's the problem.
This strategy has led to growing concerns that in its zeal to make the American public feel safe from terrorism, the government is racially profiling Muslims as potential terrorists.
It's based on generalized suspicion about an entire community and not based on actual evidence of wrongdoing.
Farhana Kera is the director of the group Muslim Advocates. She's concerned that the FBI surveillance of Muslims is on the rise.
I would say since the beginning of 2010, there seems to be almost a ratcheting up of scrutiny of the community. We seem to be getting even more reports of community members coming forward saying they've gotten a surprise visit at their home or their office from an FBI agent asking questions.
Back in Albany, we asked Shamshad Ahmed if he thinks the FBI is still watching his mosque. Do you believe that the mosque is still being surveyed, that people in this community are still under surveillance?
I believe so, yes. I believe so. I still see some people about whom I have doubts. And I know certain peoples are being used by FBI. Some of them they said that they refused, but I suspect that they refused in the beginning, but ultimately they have to accept that offer. We are not taking it lightly. We don't consider that FBI has become all of a sudden angel. Reality is there that we feel that they have not changed.